It's U of L Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
Hey there, Cards fans. Welcome to U of L Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. Hope you're interested in all that's going on at the University of Louisville and research and what the students are doing and all the great things that are happening on campus, because that's what this show is all about. So we'll be with you for the next 30 minutes or so. We'll have some interviews with some folks telling you what's going on at U of L. Coming up, she's a military veteran who, like many other vets, suffered invisible psychological wounds. She got help from a U of L psychiatrist unlocking those wounds, and she's written a book about it. Carolyn Furdek will be here to talk about her journey. And a U of L graduate who's now trying to make it on the pro tennis circuit will be here. Alex Gornet was active in community engagement while he was at U of L, and we'll also talk to him. But first, if you haven't been on U of L's Belknap campus, you're missing one of the nicest, greenest parks in Louisville. And two of the guys who oversee the plants, grass, trees, and ecology of U of L's campus are Aaron Boggs, the Director of Maintenance, and Greg Schetler, the Ground Superintendent on the Belknap campus. And they're sitting here right in front of me. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Thanks, Mark.
How's it like to be indoors for a change?
Today, it's pretty nice, as cold as it is.
You two are in charge of the Belknap campus. What do you tell folks when they say, what can you tell me about the Belknap campus? How do you describe it?
Well,
Aaron?
not being from Louisville originally, I always thought of Louisville as being a concrete jungle. And the first time I stepped on campus, I was amazed at the amount of trees, how beautiful it was. It was just not what I expected. And so whenever I get the chance, I'm always telling people, hey, you've got to get on campus and see what we've got going on.
How big is the Belknap campus, Greg? How many acres you and your guys cover?
It's about 310 acres is what we broadcast to people when someone asks me how big is it. 310 acres is the number I use.
And you can walk from side to side, end to end in, 10, 15 minutes, something
Right.
like that. It's a fairly small campus. Everything's compact, right?
We go from Central to Hill Street now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that's true.
It's pretty broad, actually, if you think about it in that regard. So, but yeah, 310 acres.
Yeah, that's pretty big. All right, so you guys are in charge of planting the flowers, cutting the grass, and so what's the philosophy on the U of L Belknap campus and deciding, what you plant, what you upkeep, what you cut down? How do you decide that?
So I think one thing that Aaron and I have tried to focus on since we've been here is let's try to make it clean. Let's try to keep the campus clean. Let's try to keep
Done
it
an
crisp.
awesome job of that.
Let's keep our tree rings nice and edged. Let's keep lines. Let's keep lines for people to see. And so I think if we're doing that, then we're doing our job. Let's keep the trash picked up. Let's make the campus inviting for people when they come onto our campus. Let's make it look like there's people here daily who care about the campus and want to put a good foot forward.
Aaron, as you know, one of my pet peeves when I got here at the U of L, I think 8 years ago, I used to call people and say, man, and I would pick up trash. As I'd walk between buildings, I'd pick up trash. I just got tired of picking it up. I don't have to do that anymore. So I think it's a really clean, good job by your crew.
It's it's an urban environment. We're bordered by a lot of, of course, public streets, so we get a lot of trash. It's, our guys, it's a priority for us. We know that when a student and their parents get out of their car and come on campus, they're judging us immediately, right. And they're making decisions by what they see, and that's kind of where our horticultural philosophy comes into play. Is what Greg and I have always tried to do is create pockets of interest across the campus. So you see one thing and you think, what's around the corner? Mm-hmm. I want to go see what's over there. And you go around the corner and there's something a little different. So, not necessarily intentionally, but we're trying to lead people through and see just little pockets of interest.
Mm-hmm. What else is in your philosophy, Greg? First of all, what did you do before you came to U of L?
I sewed equipment, construction equipment, John Deere. I sewed John Deere equipment, and then I had a horticulture background with landscaping at golf courses at Valhalla Golf Club and Hirschman Country Club and places.
So you had some background in plants and
Absolutely.
Trees and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So what is the philosophy? I mean, the other day I tweeted out a picture that was just beautiful of a group of tulips right in the middle of campus, and it was just gorgeous. Students were walking by and stuff, and you guys have recently replanted a bunch of plants in front of our building. It looks terrific, but how do you decide? Here's the kind of plants that are going to be able to grow on this campus. Here's what's going to look nice.
So I think from a broad perspective, we're always trying to choose the right plant for the right place. And if you keep that in mind, then you always are selecting plants that will do well in the environment you're intending them to grow in. So, if we're planting an oak tree, we want to make sure that we give that plant, enough space to grow that an oak tree can grow there. We don't want to create maintenance by planting a plant in the wrong place that in 10 or 12 years, I have a plant that I now have to do something that is unnatural for that plant.
And we've got some awards U of L has fairly recently over the last few years. What are some of those awards that you've gotten for the way the campus looks?
Yeah, well, we're a 7-time Tree Campus USA, which is something we're very, very proud of here. We, when we talk about horticultural philosophy, it starts with our trees and our campus forest. We treat trees here on campus like they're one of our best assets, just like a roof, just like a chiller in a building. It's something that really adds value to us. Trees, we all know the benefits. They help us with stormwater. They keep us cool with shade. They clean our air. So that's been one of our big focuses. And the Tree Campus USA Award is a designation that shows that the university has a big commitment into maintaining trees and making sure that they're here for future generations.
We're talking with Aaron Boggs, the Director of Maintenance, and Greg Schetler, the Ground Superintendent on the Belknap campus at the University of Louisville. What problems are you having in terms of disease, insects, those kinds of things on the U of L campus?
One of the major challenges that the city and our region's facing is the emerald ash borer. And so, the university has made a commitment to the tree canopy, and we're treating all of our ash trees on campus. And we're preserving those trees to make sure that they're here for generations. The urban heat-on effect is a real thing that our city's faced with, and honestly, we just can't afford to lose them.
Mm-hmm. So how do you decide when to cut down a tree and when to leave it?
Yeah, we certainly consult our arborists. We use very good arborists that we consult with, and then we take the obvious things. Safety, is it a safety issue? Does it provide aesthetic value? We certainly don't want safety issues on our campus, and if it's a safety issue, we take it down.
Aaron, we've had several folks on this show talking about the sustainability on U of L's campus, the things we're trying to do ecologically. How does what you guys do in the superintendent of grounds, how do you guys fit what you do into trying to be ecologically forward-looking?
Right. Well, absolutely, sustainability is huge for us, and the green industry, the world of horticulture is a big part of that. We try to search out ways that are going to help us in our sustainability goals, but also might help save money and ideas that make sense. A big win for us, and one that we try to promote with everybody and the rest of our partners in the city, is switching to propane in our commercial mowing equipment. That's been a huge success story for the university, and one that we've been able to bring people from the city and the state and the rest of the states to come in and see the success we've had at switching all of our commercial mowers to run off of propane fuel.
Right. As I've told you guys personally before, you guys do a great job, and you're the guys who work for you and the women who work for you do a great job too.
Yeah, that's one thing that we really should give a shout out to is the staff that come here every day to make it happen. I mean, we have some tremendous folks that show up here every day to make it happen. Aaron and I have the pleasure of guiding the ship, but those guys are the ones that make it happen every day.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks a lot, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Carolyn Furdek is a physical therapist at UofL Hospital, and she's also at the Veterans Administration Hospital, the VA hospital here in Louisville. And she's also a West Point graduate who served in the U.S. Army, came home from war with some unseen wounds. She's written a book about uncovering those wounds called Locked In, A Soldier and Civilian Struggle with Invisible Wounds, and she's here to talk about that book, her experience, and what's going on at U of L. Carolyn, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Did I pronounce your last name correct, Furdek?
You got it right.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're a veteran, so describe your experience in the Army. First off, let's start with that.
Right. So after graduating from West Point, I moved on to Fort Lewis, and I joined the Combat Engineer Battalion. And we did deploy. I deployed separately from the unit, and then with the unit several times, 3 times in 4 years. 2002, 2003, and 2005.
To where? Where'd you deploy?
Afghanistan first with a Civil Affairs Special Forces unit. Then came home for 3 months and went and did the invasion into Iraq. right up at the border. We were in front of the infantry troops, clearing the berms and the mines to lead the forces in. Stayed there for a year, building bridges and building runways and airfields, and just helping the locals. Correct. Came home for a year. Was planning on getting out. Applied for and got accepted to the FBI. Got a date at Quantico, and unfortunately, or fortunately, was stop lost. 4 months shy, and returned to Afghanistan.
What stop loss mean? What's that mean?
So stop loss, sorry for the jargon, basically is due to unit strength or manpower and a need for combat experienced veterans.
So they called you back up, is
exactly.
bottom line.
They
So
kept
you
me there.
so you didn't get the job with the FBI because you got called back into the Army?
Correct.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. And then you went to
Afghanistan again.
Afghanistan again. All right. So what year did you finally come back to the United States and we're here for good?
Right. So I came back in 2005 from Afghanistan.
All right. So it's been about 12 years.
Correct.
Then let's start with your journey then. So what started happening with you psychologically, mentally, once you got home?
Right, with no history of mental illness or in my family. In the 2 previous deployments, on the 3rd deployment in 2005, in the middle of a simple convoy from one base to another, I shut down. And that thereon led to the removal of my weapon and being medevaced out or taken on an airplane out to a hospital in Germany and placed in a psych ward. Being found sane thereafter, after about 6 to 8 weeks, I was able to rejoin my unit at request in combat, but thereafter 3 months, shut down again, and was returned to the United States through the psych wards and eventually medically discharged honorably from the military.
And that was in 2005.
Correct.
Get home.
I get home, and we think that I've got it beat now, and I'm going to prove to everybody that I am not broken. I am not disabled. I do not have a mental illness. So I then got a job as a contractor, engineer, doing the exact same thing I was doing before, intelligence and engineering work. Took a job in D.C., and it happened again and again. So eventually, I was volunteering at a hospital, Walter Reed, wanted to work with soldiers again on my days off from my contract job. Ended up meeting a soldier who had every bone in his body broken from a bomb, yet he showed up at the physical therapy department every day with a smile on his face. And I said, how can you do this every day? And he said, there were 3 other soldiers in my vehicle that never came home. What right do I have to complain? I'm alive. I can kiss my family. That there led me to want to become a physical therapist and help soldiers, which eventually brought me here.
To Louisville?
Yep.
All right. So, and you get to, by the way, we're talking with Carolyn Furdek, who's an Army veteran, as you just heard, and she's here in Louisville now, and she's written a book about her experience, and she got some help from a UofL doctor. So you get to Louisville, and I assume that's when you found Dr. El Malik.
Right. So I went to physical therapy school, got my doctorate, continued to have problems and struggles, and 10 years later, on a whim, at a suggestion of my VA provider, who we struggled with for years trying to figure out what was going on, she suggested I look up a doctor at the hospital where I work, Dr. El Malik, and he then in turn was able to decipher what it is that the rest of the doctors could not figure out. And he coined it cycloid psychosis, and he gave me a treatment regimen with a anti-seizure medication, which has since curbed the symptoms, and finally given myself, my family, my friends some peace of mind.
So what is cycloid psychosis? What is that?
So basically, cyclical. Every year or every other year, with the trigger that was never the same, I would find myself back in Afghanistan on that 3rd tour, and I would shut down.
When you say shut down and mentally you were in Afghanistan, what does that mean? What's going through your brain?
So I couldn't function. I was paranoid. I was scared. I was quiet. I didn't have the rage or anger or suicidal ideations that typically comes with perhaps PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, or other aftermaths of war. So what he said is that each time it happened, it became easier and easier for it to happen again, and the medications that I was taking weren't really stopping those symptoms.
And I think we all hear about PTSD. This is different than PTSD, is it not?
Correct. In terms that it's a psychosis, and it basically, again, a lot of times with PTSD, you might see a rage or severe depression. In my case, I just could not. I didn't want to get off my couch. I was afraid to interact with people. I wouldn't call it depressed. I'm a very high-functioning individual. 95% of the year, I can talk to you like I'm talking today. But for that 5%, I couldn't go to work. It was all I could do to take care of my two wonderful boys and, with the support of a wonderful husband, just to make it through the days.
We're talking with Carolyn Furdek, who's written a book called Locked In, A Soldier and Civilian Struggle with Invisible Wounds. And she is dealing with those invisible wounds with the help of a doctor at the University of Louisville. What would you say to folks who say, I just don't understand how this happens. I don't understand how this just kicks in and you just fall apart, basically. What do you tell them? How do you describe? How'd you tell your kids, mommy is just, you knew at the time you were shutting down, right?
Correct.
So what do you tell them?
Well, when it comes to my kids, in fact, that was one of the things somebody said, okay, you write a book for adults. What about for kids? How do we explain to our kids how this happens? And during one of the episodes, I couldn't get my son on the bus. He said, I want to stay home with you. I said, Jack, I'm sick. I can't go to work today. And he says, you're not sick. You don't have a cold. You don't have a cough. I said, well, it's in my mind. And he said, but you don't have a runny nose. And I said, my mind is just having a hard time with memories from the war and that have followed me for over a decade. And mommy's getting help. And I have doctors that want to help me. And since I met El Malik, I believe has. And we've helped to, for the last 2 years, I've gotten a lot better. Only had one episode, but it was very short. Mm-hmm. And I was back on my feet and working again very quickly.
And you're working with veterans, too, at the VA hospital and at University Hospital, correct, as a physical therapist, right?
Yes,
Tell
absolutely.
us about that.
Well, definitely whenever, as a physical therapist at the hospital in acute care, what I'm doing is I'm going into your hospital room when you're hurting, when you've been laying in the bed for a long time, whether it be a surgery, car accident, and I'm going to get you out of that bed. And you're going to hate me when I walk in the door because you just want to lay there. You want to get sleep because you really don't get much sleep in the hospital, and you want to go home. Well, I'm your ticket home, myself and my colleagues. Or if you aren't ready to go home and the doctors say you're medically stable, I'm going to suggest perhaps going to a rehab facility where you can be safely integrated and meet your goals physically to be able to return home.
And do you pass along what you found out from Dr. El Malik? It's a little unusual to find, isn't it, a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Is he a psychiatrist?
Yes, he is, correct. Yep, I always get him mixed up, too.
Yeah, me too. A psychiatrist who will come up with this psychosis, what's the word I'm looking for here? The designation that's what you have, not PTSD. So are you passing that along to other veterans who you're meeting along the way, saying, "Hey, maybe you got what I got"?
Yeah, actually, well, that's where the book came along. My mother begged me to put my story to paper for 10 years, and I did not want to do it. I didn't think it was important. And after I was doing so well and kept getting, questions from my family, I was like, "Look, I'm doing a lot better." So what started out as an email over the period of 3 days actually turned into what is now a book. I like to do things quickly and move on. I'm a physical therapist who loves her job. I'm not an author. My brother made that very clear. This is not a Pulitzer Prize winning book, but it went viral. And after we learned it needed approval from the Pentagon, apparently if you serve in the military and deal with any kind of intelligence, you need to get that approval, and I wanted to. And so they approved it, and again, after we had shut it down for their approval, we finally published it, and more veterans are reading it, and just regular civilians are reaching out and saying, this book helped me. It made me either relate to the symptoms or know somebody that has, or just made me a better human being for understanding that mental illness or mental health should not be such a taboo subject.
And how can folks find this book?
So it's available on Amazon. It's also at a lot of the local bookstores, Carmichael's, and in Karen's bookstore, I think out in LaGrange, and a few others, one over in Indiana.
Last name is Furdek, Furdek, and she wrote the book Locked In, A Soldier and Civilian Struggle with Invisible Wounds. Thanks for being on the program. Thanks for your service to your country. Alex Gornet is a recent UofL graduate who decided he wanted to be the next Roger Federer. So he's here with us today. He wants to be a tennis star, and he's here to talk about chasing that dream, but also some of the projects he was involved in at UofL and how UofL helped prepare him for his world travels. Welcome, Alex. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I got the nice Cardinal shirt on there.
I did. Props to my dad on that one. I had him help me out. He works here, so I had to steal it for the day.
I stole it. Okay. So you graduated when from U of L?
I graduated last May. I was a major in chemistry. I'm also pretty heavily involved in some community service through athletics and a course I ended up taking. And then putting the chemistry to good use now, playing tennis out on the tour.
I guess you're not going to work for any lab anytime soon.
I don't think anytime soon. We'll see. Maybe down the road, grad school might be in the future, or med school or something. But for now, it's definitely chasing that dream of hopefully being the next Federer.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how that tennis career turns out, whether you're working in a lab here shortly. Huh?
Yeah, it's tough to put a timeline on it.
All right, so you were on the U of L tennis team. You did very well, obviously. What did you do in the NCAA's? How good were you? I guess is what I'm asking.
As a team or
as you
individual? So I never made individual NCAA's actually.
Okay.
My highest singles ranking I think was around 100 in the country, and my highest doubles ranking was around 30 or 35 in the country. So kind of right on that outside edge,
right.
But.
So what prompted you to think, rated the number 100 player in the country, that you could make it on the pro tennis circuit? How'd you get to that decision?
I'm going to sound like such a little kid, but I've always wanted to play pro, and I never wanted to look back and say to myself, man, I should have gone for it. So I think it's one of those where you have to at least give yourself a chance and see what happens. And, if you give it your all and it doesn't work out, then at least but I definitely don't want to look back and say, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that, I should have done this.
Yep.
I think it's best to go for it and see where it takes me, and hopefully it takes me to the top, but
give it
it's
a
long way.
Yeah, it is a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
Yeah.
That's a rock and roll song, by the way. I'm really old. So where have you been? What have you been doing? You got out of school, and did you jump directly to some circuit that was just under the major pro level, or how does that work?
So I took a little time off after college, because 4 years of college tennis, for anybody that knows, is a mental and physical grind. You're pretty worn out. So I started playing last fall, and so the guys you see on TV, Federer, Djokovic, Murray, it's called the ATP circuit, and then there's two other circuits. The level below ATP is Challengers, and then the entry-level pro tournaments are called Futures. So right now I'm playing Futures, and then obviously the goal is work my way up through the system and ultimately get to the ATP tournaments. But it takes a couple years to get there. It takes a lot of work, a lot of travel. I pretty much live on the road at this point.
Right. So where you been for some of these tournaments?
So I started off, I was in Canada last fall. I went to Toronto, Niagara. I went to Egypt last November. Egypt again to start off the year. I was actually living in Belgium at the start of this year for 2 months, and I just came back from a little southern swing. I went to Memphis, Little Rock, and Orange Park, Florida.
So you're seeing the world as part of this. How are you paying for it?
My parents are my sponsors right now.
Your parents are your sponsors.
The parents are the
They're your corporate sponsors,
yes.
Out of the Gornet household.
Yes,
huh?
the Gornet Family Trust.
Well, what's it been like, though? I mean, have you enjoyed it? Did you realize how hard it was going to be to do life on the road and to cut it on the tennis circuit? What's been your impression?
I love it, but I have to be honest, it's definitely not the glamorous lifestyle a lot of people think when you hear pro sports, especially pro tennis, because for me, the hardest part's not even the tennis or the working out. It's you're by yourself at least 90% of the time. You're spending a lot of time on the road, in hotels, in cars, on the plane. So you got to be, it can wear you down, I think, mentally more than physically. But I think it's a good time. I'm happy I'm out there. I'm enjoying it. Like you said, I get to see places I probably would have never seen in my life through tennis. So I don't have too many complaints.
Gotcha. We're talking with Alex Gornet, who's was a tennis player at the University of Louisville and also just graduated from U of L in 2016. Now he's trying to make it on the tennis circuit. Well, let's talk about some of the community engagement, because you were involved in some as a student. So why don't you tell us about some of the things you did outside the classroom and off the tennis court?
So the two main organizations I worked with, one of them was called One Love, and that dealt with awareness for relationship violence, and sexual assault and things like that. I don't know if you ever the story with the Virginia lacrosse player.
Yep.
That's how that organization started. So I got involved with that, and then my senior year I took a course with Dr. Burge in the business school, where we had the main focus was you organize a community service project, and we chose to work with Portland Elementary down in Weston, Louisville, and organized a graduation day for them where they got to come to campus, they got to hang out with the basketball players, had lunch on campus, got exposed to some of the things we're doing in class, with the goal of just getting them thinking about higher education. Because one story that blew my mind is one of my friends volunteered down there, and they went on a field trip downtown, and the kids were asking, "Are we in a different state right now?" It's like, you're 10 minutes away from home, and so just trying to open their mind and realize the possibilities they have for their future.
Right. Did you find that important and engaging when you did stuff like that?
I did. I thought it was very important. Not only if you're an athlete at Louisville, you have a lot of sway in the community here. So I think for that you should feel, I don't want to say an obligation, but I think almost a responsibility to help out these other kids, especially who don't even have the chance or may not even know what's out there. But I think it's also really rewarding when you have that opportunity to help someone.
And the One Love project that you worked with, kind of describe what you did with that. Explain to people what that is and why you thought it was important.
So the main thing with that was we would organize workshops where, whether it was with athletes or other students, sororities or fraternities, and there was a video that went along with it, pretty moving video. I would definitely recommend watching it for a lot of college students. And after that video, we would have guided discussions and break out into small groups to go over some of the warning signs and things you can look for in your own friends' relationships, or how can you interject yourself and help out a friend if you think they're going through something troubling like that. Which it's very important. You hear a lot of tragic stories in college of that happening, and a lot of people were, man, I never even saw it, but then they look back and they're like, oh, all the signs were there. So just trying to educate people about that so we can avoid another tragedy like that.
Right, and how kids can get out of these,
Exactly.
students can get out of these relationships, and how you can help them out of these relationships that may be abusive, and what you can do. As a chemistry major, was it hard?
It definitely wasn't easy, but I love chemistry, so I enjoyed what I was doing. Definitely a lot of late nights in the library, a lot of late nights in the lab, a lot of lab reports. Can't say I missed the lab too much, especially organic chemistry. That's not for me. Count me out on that one. But I loved it. I thought it was super interesting, super cool. We'll see where it takes me in the future. But by the time I get back into it, there's probably going to be so many new techniques. I'm going to have to go back to school for 2 years just to learn them.
Just to figure out what's
Exactly.
going on, what's new and different. All right. Well, so going forward, what's the game plan for you? Here you are. It's May of 2017. What do you see yourself doing over the next 6 months?
So I've been playing a little under a year now, pro. As of now, the plan is I'll play through the end of this year for sure. And then I think at that point I'm going to have to make a decision on if I'm going to keep playing or not. Ideally, I'd be ranked around 800 to 1,000 in the world at that point, because then that'll set me up well going to the next year, and then keep working my way up. But if I'm not there, I'll have to make a tough decision because it's expensive to be out there. You have to. It's not like other sports where the team is paying for your travels. It's all individual, so it's expensive, and it's also tough to truly make a career in tennis. Even if you're not top 200 in the world, you're not making money or making a living, which is absolutely absurd to think that you can be one of the best 300, 400 players in the world and you're losing thousands of dollars a year. But it's tough because obviously, you want to chase the dream, but you have to be realistic with yourself about it too.
All right. Well, Alex, good luck on the tennis circuit, and if you don't make it on the tennis circuit, good luck in life. You got a chemistry degree. You should be able to put that to good use if you have to.
Thank you.
All right. Alex Gornet from the University of Louisville, recent UofL grad. Thanks for listening to UofL Today with Mark Hebert. Go Cards.